Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Total Podcast. I am your host, Onvermel. Here today, with Zack-Ta. Zack-Ta, how you doing?
Tired.
Yeah, you should have seen the amount of yawning. It looked like he was going to doze off. Unfortunately, this is done a little bit later in the day than normal, and might have been a long day. But sorry for the delay, gap in podcast to our three viewers who actually look forward to
Our
these.
three regular viewers.
Sorry, Jerome Pitbull and How One. It's been a bit of a last month of this stuff. But we're back here, and this is the last recording that's related to our webcomics because, well, the next week will be, when you're hearing this next week from the time you're hearing this, will be the crossover championship one, which we've already recorded. So this is the last one, which is, Sorted Tales.
We started with Zack-Ta, and we shall end with Zack-Ta.
Well,
Only I shall
mathematically speaking, there was going to be a high chance it's going to be like that, just looking at the numbers.
I mean, that's true.
I'm pretty sure you make up 50% of the comics.
No.
Close.
Just because How One actually has a larger roster than you think when you actually
He has
put it down.
4, and Eck has 2, and I have 1, so that's 7.
4, does he have 3 plus crossover? You have to remember, crossover is also
I'm not really counting crossover. But you're close. But anyways, Sorted Tales, which, if I recall correctly, is technically your newest comic, a Uncle Lego one, or am I correct?
It is the most recent Lego webcomic I have started.
So I guess it's kind of fitting that we end with this. I mean, we kind of had to wait until we talked about Randomly Assembled first.
Yes. Randomly Assembled was my first main comic, and it's been my whatever comic since, whatever plots I had. But Sorted Tales was basically a spin-off. It's ideas that work fine for Randomly Assembled, but were basically smaller in scope. Since Randomly Assembled, my whole goal is just to have random storylines for random characters. Sorted Tales was characters I haven't necessarily used before, or actual stories I wanted to tell that would have a definite end in sight. Like, there would actually be a beginning, a middle, and end, not just a beginning and keep going until I run out of ideas.
And it's also not reliant on being interwoven with Randomly Assembled.
No.
It can, if I'm correct.
There are definitely references from Randomly Assembled in there, and as far as anyone needs to be concerned, it is the same universe. But it's not like it's broken up into stories rather than just being a bunch of random comics for different stories. I focus on one, maybe 2 at a time, and they're not interconnected. Each story is its own thing, working on its own merits. None of the big universe that we have established in the
your pile of spaghetti
MCU.
universe.
It's not my MCU.
I mean, it kind of lives up to the name of, like, really between Randomly Assembled and Sorted Tales. They do very much live up to the name. Randomly Assembled.
Randomly Assembled was a random garbage. Randomly Assembled Lego. Sorted Tales is, well, the leg was sorted and told it to Tails.
Yeah, I mean, it's metaphorical in its name, but it does live up to it. It's very concise. It's a lot more, I would say, grounded, kind of, and has a lot more, I would say, effort into the story rather than just the gags. I mean, don't get there are still gags. I'm pretty sure there's still gags after like every comic in this one as well.
I like humor too much not to end on a punchline.
It's hard not to.
I like to end on a punchline because it gives you a little, it's like the little reward for the week. But if it's a serious situation, I might switch more to cliffhanger than comedy. But
Pardon me?
Yeah, if you like gag a day or just something to look forward to every day, Randomly Assembled your comic. But if you like more of an actual story that's more thought out, might be more heartfelt, or at the very least, more thought out.
More engaging.
Sure, we'll go with more engaging.
Well, I'm going with that.
Sorted Tales is definitely more the one to go for. And it should have a little of everything. I've got a couple medieval stories going out. I've got a superhero one I want to work on.
I'm excited for that one.
An adventure one that's already here.
I'm going to lie. The adventure one, for Randomly Assembled fans, is definitely one that everyone should check out, in my opinion.
Given that this is the first one that's very clearly, not just, it's got the same characters, but no, it's, flat out referencing Randomly Assembled.
Like I said, if you read Randomly Assembled, at least majority of it, especially the adventure comics, and you've read this, you'll go, ah.
It all makes sense now.
I mean, I didn't know it was going to connect, and when I read, at least a couple comics, I was going, I see what you did. I see what you did there. So it's definitely nice. And also the whole idea of basically having another webcomic to basically do whatever you want, but that doesn't fit in your large scale one, which is almost kind of the opposite, I would say, at least how one kind of did it, where he's got his larger, more grander stories in the regular webcomic, and then just the random nonsense in the backup one.
See, that's just that though. Like, I thrive on nonsense. So I started
I
with
knew
nonsense.
it.
Granted, randomly assembled over the years has sort of become like a large story has been unfolding, but
Yeah,
for the most part, it's still random nonsense. Sword of Tales is more orderly nonsense. It's still nonsense, but it's orderly.
I love it. It is really good, and definitely like with I think Sword of Tales you've had about 4 or 5 stories
I think
now.
we're going to 4 because official ones was we started with the first chapter of the Smith, which we're on to the second. Just
Which,
finished the
by
second
the way,
chapter.
the Smith, by the way, for people, I've been mentioned for with many other stuff of the ones. This is one of the most, I would say, backlog childhood memory sort of, uh, inspired.
No, okay, the Smith is a very interesting story. The story as seen on TV. You would assume it was just straight from the games me and my siblings played, and all more the stuff I built repeatedly out of Lego. Funny thing is though, I made that specific story because of a dream I had, and this past character stuff worked really well. And there's aspects of there in there too that also I've taken from a book I wrote based on that stuff as well. So it's a real hunch, but it's not as a direct line as you think it would be.
It kind of reminds me of, uh, actually, I don't know if any of the other webcomics have really had, like, something from our deep childhood brought. Cause, like, yeah, I know, like,
Spanky.
I'm thinking more like
Android files. That's like deep
true.
childhood.
But
Right
my
there.
thing is, I don't know how one's like specifically what's their events, but I'm like the whole idea of the greenies and Greenie Smith and the blackies as they're technically called, and the whiteys and the brownies and the blueies, the
See,
reddies.
well, I'm not sold on calling them the Vrawl. I stuck with it because it was basically a translation for black. I do like how I justified the term blackies as basically a slang the good guys use as a demeaning term
If
to like make them less
okay,
creepy.
before anybody really looks at judges us too harshly about this, it sounds worse than it is. But if you actually watch it, it's like or read it, it makes a bit more sense because they're
The minifigures are black from head to toe.
also
Black
these.
pants, black
This is
shirt,
coming from the
black
same
helmet.
person when he made Bonko Man. Ups decided to make the toe color. We had what was it again? Oh yeah, toe green,
And
toe
toe
blue,
blue,
toe
toe
black,
black,
toe
toe
white,
white,
toe brown, and the other one,
the other one.
red. And that would get the Shadow Bork, which were
The shadow.
monochrome Bork. There's definitely
We had a thing.
I would say
I had a
your
long.
pre-teens.
There has been a long-standing tradition for me specifically, maybe the rest of us to some extent,
I think
monocoloring things.
I think everyone else. I think the rest of us did it like one time as a ha, but you very much took that and
It was also like a
ran.
challenge. Like you got certain pieces in black or in white, and you're like, just how monochrome
I blame
can I make?
Takanuva.
Takanuva was it? Takanuva and like the Borg call too, because in the Borg plus the Borg call
Mm.
and the Roshki, you got the sockets, you got the limbs, you got the body. So getting monochrome
Now
was actually
I don't
really
know
easy.
if that predated the blackies and the greenies. I don't know if it does.
I want to say I have a memory of making a blackie back in the acreage, but that would be very unlikely since the only real parts I would have had would have been potentially an aqua shark.
Yeah, it's
So
hard to say.
very early on in our, because
I feel like blackies would have
so
existed once you got Darth Maul.
the blackie leader has, as far as I can remember, has always been an ogle armor and a Vladik helmet.
I kind of vaguely remember
But
pre-Vladik.
earlier on, I think it was ogle armor with basically ogle with a black visor. But I think at the very least, when Alpha Team came out, the second wave of Alpha Team was at least the earliest it came out. But I think I did Blackies even before then.
It's hard to say. So it's like
Again, I think the leader could have easily been an Aqua Shark helmet, or even a Darth Vader. No, I can also remember making them with a Darth Vader fig, so at least as early as Far and Y-wing.
yeah, I definitely say that the Smith story is the one that I'm most interested in because I believe it's still going on.
It is. Interesting enough, Ek and How1 have both expressed a lot of interest in this one. How1 has been looking forward to, on the other hand, because we've talked about it a lot, in the inspiration stages.
Yes, on the other
But
hand, yes.
Eck has a personal connection to the Smith, so he has been very intrigued with how the story is going to go.
I can understand that. And then like what other ones were there? There was
There was the Four Extreme Lunatics.
Oh
Which,
yeah. Okay, to me, I know what that feels like. It now feels like a prequel to like this crossover.
that's why that's why I wanted to have them, is because I already established them as kind of as characters in the universe. But they're a prime example of Sword of Tales characters. They're characters I really wanted to introduce into a comic, and I thought I could work with, but I didn't think I had enough material to just basically be the next quartet. Though in hindsight, I should have made them the quartet.
I think the Cortex will work, but I see what you're going with. So
Because I really like them as just general. They're cool figs. They got enough potential because they don't actually have established personalities, but they have enough coolness and like verging personalities that they were prime candidates to just be given whatever roles they were thrust into. Kind of like Dave, who he was originally called Tom.
yes. I do think the one thing about Sword of Tales, I can probably say two things that people, or at least one thing specifically people will probably never see there. If I'm correct, it's probably Bionicle Tales because Bionicle Tales is essentially a Sword of Tales, but for a bunch of different Bionicle stories.
Funny you should say that.
Oh
I
no.
have a Toa team on my shelf, which I made for the explicit purpose of doing a Bionicle themed superhero story in Sword of
Well,
Tales.
never mind. I've been
have
proven wrong.
I have a 3-chapter arc semi planned out, though it's definitely in the backlogs of ones I know I have less energy to work on, mostly due to backdrops and whatnot. So the chance of it coming to light anytime sooner is not likely. But once I actually finish the Smith, that's when I'm going to actually put the next in the production will be my superhero story. And then and then there's the one that another one I'm working on is the Knights United, and when that's done,
yes, that
I'm
I'm
gonna
so
work
looking
on
forward to.
I'm gonna work on Beyond the Stars. That's all I'll say for that one.
Okay, the superhero story, is that the one that I think it is, or is it the different one? Is it the one that I hope it is, or is it the different
Actually, both. I
Wait,
have started the one you're thinking on, but there's an actual superhero story I want to work on that I actually started to write out as a book, but like, no, this just doesn't work in a book format.
Look, I just want to say this. If I don't see a certain character steal some eggs and then has to have a Triceratops stampede, I will be disappointed.
That was never going to happen.
The stampede, though? Stealing the eggs? Post-credit scene stealing eggs?
Maybe
post-credit scene stealing. You know what?
It'll make no sense to anyone,
but for the fans, you and me. Fans.
Don't worry, it will have evil raptors.
I mean, it's one of those cases where like I feel like shoehorning your raptors would fit way better than most people would think.
I shoehorn raptors into every comic, and that's not about Sword of Tales. Every story in Sword of Tales, somewhere, whether it makes sense or not, there will be a raptor.
Naturally.
Oh, that was the last one. Quest for the Ruby.
Ah, yes.
That one had the most shoehorned raptor, and I still think it worked.
Yeah, so, yes,
the curse.
The modern reboot of an old tale.
Yeah.
I think production value actually went up from,
that one had very consistent, simple but consistent backdrops.
It worked well.
That's another
I think it also works well because, let's be honest, the original source had pretty simple backdrops.
This is the Quest for the Ruby was literally a retelling of one of our older brother's quote-unquote Lego movies that's more just stop motion with words over it.
Oh, that's something I should actually talk to Hal One and the Lost Toe about. They're old Lego movies. Because, yes, those two did a lot of old Lego movies, which was one Quest for Ruby.
I actually plan to do... I actually have already done a retelling of The Stolen Christmas Presents on Randomly Assembled, and I do plan to do another one of Adventures in Time. But, as I was saying, with Quest for the Ruby, though, when our brothers did that, the desert was literally a piece of cloth. Yellow and white. So even though I had tan base plates, I actually intentionally made the grounds a couch cushion. A Jedi outfit that I had that I sprawled out to pay homage to the fact that they did not use Lego base plates as the ground, even though I had the pieces to use.
Like I say, it's classic.
And honestly, in the case of a desert dune, rather than trying to build grounds,
really well.
A tan cloth works better because you get the dunes, just get the flows in it.
Indeed, indeed. Oh, no, that was good. That's the end of the Guinness there. Ooh. Yeah, no. So I think it was like, well, that's like a 5 right now. So it's definitely one of those comics I would say that I get most invested in. But again, I do get invested in stories more than Giga Days, which, it's nice to get invested in a story, but also knowing that these stories won't go on forever.
That's the thing. It's like I'm guaranteed that if I am posting the story on here, the end is already made, or it's like literally like the Smith is not finished, but I am just finished the third season. Technically, I was only going to have three, but the third one kind of just came out of nowhere. I'm like, I'm going to roll with this. I'm not going to rush the story if I don't have to. If I can get another season, I will. But unlike Android Fellas, I'm not just going to keep adding one if there's a new idea. It's like, no, I have an end. This was, I think, just a step that I think just helped like flesh out the world. Really, just really enjoy it a bit more. But I am going to work on the fourth, and it's going to come. And yeah, everything else I am posting, other than that, if it's not going to be broken up into chapters, it will have the end already in mind. Like, on the other hand, I've started posting about a month ago. Its end was made before I even started posting, so it's done. You can expect to see how it's going to wrap up.
It's always a nice thing to know that when you find a story that you know that, oh, there will be an end.
I would say the superhero story, the one you're not looking forward to,
Or,
the
well,
one I'm looking forward
the
to,
one I'm unaware of,
Yeah.
I'd say.
is actually one of the main reasons I wanted to do a Sordid Tales comic, because it's a story that, as I briefly mentioned, I started out as writing it as like a book. But because it was superhero, I always felt kind of wrong in my head, and like I make a lot of webcomics. I figured that would be a better medium. A Lego webcomic would make more sense. Just it would feel better.
Yeah, superheroes without pictures
And
is
because
weird.
it wasn't going to be a continue on as long as I do. It's like I actually have like the most of the beats of the story. I need to iron out in my head how it's exactly going to play out, but I know it's going to start. I know what happens throughout, and I know how it's going to end. So it had an end. So I'm like, I want to make this more like a story. So something like Sordid Tales would be required for a more set story.
Nah, nice, nice. I mean, yeah, no, it's like I think it's definitely one of those things where it's like, I wouldn't be surprised that like within the future, like the rest of the siblings would all have a Sordid Tales sort of extra comic because like
At
I
this
almost
point,
because like
only
well
Eck really is missing something
well
like it.
I did make a second webcomic page for other comics because I have made various other one-offs and a short little other story essentially. But then I kind of retrofitted it to focus on just the one. But I have like the other name kind of on the backlog ready to go. Whenever I went to. Then also how one's got basically Crossbreaks, which
Yeah.
I would say is the most dump ground of dump grounds.
I kind of am surprised Eck has not made one at this point, because I think even in Parts Life there has been the occasional random odd comic, more for the sake of
Well, there definitely is.
he has some random odd comics.
And but in fairness though, he always finds a way to get kind of make it fit in.
Though I'm not gonna lie, I sort of feel like if Eck has random odd comics, they're just always gonna be Bionicle.
No, you have a couple with the Doctor.
No, I just see Bionicle comics being like his absolutely unrelated, completely just random one-off comics being Bionicle.
You know what? I could totally see him making comics about his Ruru people.
And the potatoes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he did make a comic about potatoes, technically.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I'm probably not gonna go too much longer here. Probably just maybe actually just wrap it up just because tired. And in all honesty, it doesn't have as much history or as much to go over without.
Yeah.
Because
Randomly
the
Assemble
thing
its
is because
history.
this also is a lot about plot. I'm like we can't go that deep into it without
I
spoiling
mean,
stuff.
there's a talking about like what the comics were, but we sort of cover like four extreme lunatics are just four people who seek out the grumpy old man in the mountains to
Learn how to be tough.
claim to be tough. It doesn't really play. It never plays out that way whenever I do it, but I definitely like it because I really feel like I finally portrayed Pix the best way he should be portrayed.
Pix is a legacy character
does
in the
things
Zack-Ta
because-
universe.
He's never trying to prove anything. But at the same time, it's like, well, fine. You want to do it, fine.
Let's get him out of here.
If it gets rid of you, I'll do it. Not because I care. I don't even know. It's like you can't convince Pix to do anything. But sometimes he will do it just because,
Like you can't trick him.
you can't trick him. But if he sees it as a challenge to get rid of you, then he might do it.
Or he'll do it just because it's less work than actually, trying to get rid of you.
Basically, he
way.
wants you gone, and he acknowledges the fact that the quickest and easiest way to get you gone is just to humor you.
Yeah. So as per all these comics, first off, do you have any ambitions for this?
The ambitions is to get all the stories I have in my head down and made. If more come along the lines, they shall join the roster. Any story I start, I do want to finish, but Sword of Tales could either be the comic that lives on the longest, or it will be the one that dies out once ideas start to burn out. Because Randomly Assembled has so much to work with that even if some stories die, it can keep going. But Uncle Tales, I am sort of feeling the idea burnout rather than creative burnout, so
It
it
might go on a hiatus,
it could
sort of thing.
just come to an end, or at least change for a while. And yeah, and crossover championship. Let's be honest. Eventually, it's gonna eventually we're just gonna give up.
I mean, at this point, like half the contributors have kids now.
Though I mean, we've got this year going pretty good. I think this for a joint effort has so far been our best. No one's been
Yeah,
late so far.
the third month was already some. I was late. Well, I cheaped down the third month already. I think last time.
I don't remember.
I believe that was Adventure Task where I made two comics in the dark.
You still put the comics up though. I don't recall you
Yeah,
actually
but I don't think I made. I think I missed 1 week though.
Still, like, if you don't fill up your full week, it's not a huge issue. As long as you put the comic out there and you've covered the bases.
True, true. But I think we have more made ahead of time.
Some of us did, to some
Well,
extent.
I'm at the point where I at least have up to
I'm working on task 6.
five.
I'm about a month and a half ahead.
Wait, this is the fourth month, and I have two more. Yeah, so I basically got half the year essentially done.
But, like, we've got, you're claiming to do next year's, which means after
I have agreed
that,
to do that,
we'll be
yes.
doing another joint one like this because we've all been waiting for the...
For me,
You and Ak have been waiting for that, for you to finish yours so we could do some sort of... Because you and Ak have plot relevances that you want to work with.
yeah, I kind of helped people out Stranglehold on this
And
one.
I'm already got ideas for one after that. So best case scenario, we do have another 3 years coming.
Yeah, and on honestly, I think I was saying actually, well, we'll be talking more about that in the next week. You guys will hear about it.
Right, that's right. It hasn't come there yet.
So, but yeah. So I mean, I was asking the second question of do you see an end in sight, but you kind of already answered that.
I don't see a definitive end, but I do imagine there will be an end.
Yeah, he'll die someday.
Honestly, it's either going to end because I've burned through all the ideas without new ones replacing them, which is not usually the case. Usually new ideas crop up because you get new minifigs or something you want to use, and you're like, I got a story here. Or literal just burnout. I have been noticing in the recent years, partially I think just to the new living arrangements, making comics getting the pictures is a hassle, and because I'm not around on weekends a lot, if I'm gone one day, throws off my routine. I don't necessarily make all the comics for a week.
I mean, it's true. Pretty much all your comics are made in the same location.
Yeah.
Well, ever since you moved into the one location, you pretty much make almost. Oh, I guess you were making before you moved out. But most of it was probably made in the time that you really got into your groove.
I got my groove, a little more space to work with. They didn't have to clear much things away, but it's usually to make my whole week roster of comics. It's Sunday and Saturday mornings. Usually I can get all my bases covered one day, but randomly assembled because I do 8, try to do 8 a week. I might only get 4. So currently randomly assembled's taking the hit for getting shipped. Though sometimes, though if I ran out of pictures, sometimes it might be a week or two before working on another one again without making up the loss just because I'm lazy. And as I said, I'm losing the motivation to take pictures. Sometimes when I get on a roll though, it's easy.
Yeah. But yeah, no, so for those listening, definitely go check out Sorted Tales. A link will be in the description as usual, and I would actually highly recommend it because I would say for newcomers, perhaps it might be one of the most interesting to get into because it had the least weird Lego lore to it.
I was going to say it's the least amount of commitment. There's already some complete stories up there, and well, Android Files I think has been a very engaging story, even if you don't know the history and whatnot. It's fleshed out. Sword of Tales is definitely, I would say, the easiest to follow for the sake of it's short. The stories, there's finished, they've got ends.
At least if you want, a story. So
that's what you're.
And like I said, I personally enjoyed them a lot. So I'm like I said, I think you guys enjoyed. So definitely, like I said, check it out. And yeah, no, thanks for chatting. And I have been your host, Onvermel. This has been the Onvermel Report, and we are retiring very much so from the night.